All right, we're ready for Marco Polizzi. He is the Director of Operations of Perfusion.com, and today he will discuss cybersecurity awareness for healthcare professionals, including electronic medical records, HIPAA and high-tech compliance, and protecting personal health information. He also has 25 years in the industry and does consult with the FBI Community Outreach Program as well. All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just want to make sure that no one has rotten tomatoes out there. It's the end of the day, so let's try to keep it as fun as possible. As I've been introduced candidly by our colleague, I've been in the industry, at least in the healthcare industry, for the past 25 years. I started as a trauma nurse in a Trauma 1 level in Southwest Florida, and as soon as I started, they thought that maybe I was good enough to become a healthcare risk manager. So when I started doing that, I started noticing some gaps, because when I started, informatics was not really used anymore, but at that time the informatics was started to creep in the hospital system with DOS systems. And something that I never understood, even in the beginning, even before security was even put into perspective, was that every single laptop, well, there were no really laptops at that times, but the workstations, every single one of them, they had the passwords on the keyboards. And I was like, well, that defeats the whole purpose of the password. And those were the first hints that I was like, that started really to bug me. Door jams would actually, sometimes they had already some keypads on it, and they already had some numbers. And I was like, really, those don't understand. And the more I started to be more proficient, and I became the director of the operating room for cardiac and neurosurgery, I noticed that it was a discrepancy between the privacy officers and the IT person. The IT personnel, I never saw them. They only showed up when my screen went blue and nothing was working. And suddenly they showed up and they disappeared as fast. And no one had any ideas where they physically were. Really, they were appearing and disappearing. And over the years, I started to try to bring those two silos together and be more on the horizontal approach. Then about 5 years ago, I started to be very interested about helping for the cybersecurity, because I have 2 daughters. The internet started going, and suddenly it was kind of viral. And which brings me to the first video, slides right here. As you can see, in 2004, the internet users were 812 billions. In 2013, which was just a little 2 years ago, 2.7 billion users worldwide. And it will increase even further by 48% by 2017, which means that everybody now is interconnected. And there are also some consequences, because it's true. It's a wonderful tool for us to navigate the internet and to see what's out there and convenience, actually, our lives. Right here, social life. I can see now, my wife and I still go on vacation and so on and so forth, and my daughters, for example, just to keep them in check, they have thousands of friends. So suddenly they become, social bugs, but virtually. And when you see the increase, in 2005, there were 6 million. Now they are, in 2013, like 2 years ago, 1.15 billion users of Facebook, and that's just one of the social medias. As I've been introduced earlier, occasionally I do consult with the FBI and I do help them. Facebook, it's only one of hundreds of social media available. This is one of the most probably publics. All the other ones are the most obscure. And as you can see down, 3 out of 4 criminals or cyber criminals operates on social media. It's a perfect way. They have no face. They can be whatever they want to be. And they know how to network with other people. But this is still in our private lives. Once again, the use of cell phone. Look at the difference between 2004 and 2012. How many more devices do we have? I can assure you, probably most of us here have more than one device that is interconnected with the internet right now in this room. A few years ago, we went to the public phone on the corner. Hopefully it was clean enough to make a phone call if we needed something. Now everybody is actually connected. And with smartphone, basically they are portable offices for us. Once again here, also using the apps. Apps are wonderful tools. That's why they call them apps. People use them for a variety of things, but also opens up doors to other people that have different goals. And here it is. It will affect our lives, not only in a personal life, but also professionally. Every 18 seconds, we have somebody who will be victimized by cybercrime. Many of us are probably from different sectors. Most of us here, of course, we are in the IT world or security world, and each one of us may have either banking or industry, law enforcement, so on and so forth. But there is one thing that I can assure you that 99.9% of all the audience here, even the one outside that have nothing to do with our meeting, have in common. By the moment that we were born, we have a medical record. Regardless if we like it or not, we do have a medical record. And this medical record now, it is actually promoted as an electronic. As a matter of fact, as you can see here, in 1996, the government said, okay, we have this phenomena that is growing. We have the informatics and internet and everything else that is growing. And everything will be now put in the electronic format, like electronic medical records, EMRs. So in 1996, the government, in its wisdom, said, let's make some guidance, especially in the Code of Federal Regulations, where actually we will protect the privacy and information in part of the health records. As I mentioned earlier, IT and privacy people never talk to one another. Once again, the gap was still there. Therefore, things start to go through the cracks, and opportunistic people out there that were trying to take advantage of this information started to see some, especially here in 2009, some very serious effects on our private lives and private information, especially in the healthcare. As you can see there, just to concentrate on one side of this particular slides, on the lower right quadrant, you can see there that in 2009, $6.5 billion were the approximate cost of cyber attacks in healthcare only. In fact, today, for example, and we will see more details in some actual facts, per each chart that has been compromised or stolen or otherwise, it will cost more or less $240 per chart just to remediate the attacks or the information that was stolen, so on and so forth. Here's it's not quite up to date. It's probably a couple of years old now, but actually it went worse. As you can see though, 55% of this compromise, of this data breach, actually has been caused by the data physically stolen. And often we see in some data that inadvertently or on purpose, actually it was the personnel or even the physician who's working with those charts that actually steals that, voluntarily or involuntarily. And when you consider the rest, if you consider though, the data compromised by hacking, it's only 6%, which is fairly small in compared to the rest. But once again, this pie chart is changing dramatically. Here we go, right here, the MIT Technology Review and Technology.com in collaboration also with IBM. Right here says that in 2015, it could be the year of the hospital attack. Because they tested the, we saw the target, we've been talking about this for most of the day, banking, so on and so forth. If you go, for example, a criminal, when I work sometimes some cases and I assist with the FBI, the average was about $5. If you're a bad guy, you try to get a workable credit card until somebody finds out and they block it, and that's it. $5, you can get a credit card that can work out there. A medical chart, about 4 years ago, It was about $50 per medical chart in the black market. This year, as we speak from latest intel that we received, it will cost up to $1,000 to get the medical records. And the important is, a credit card is just money. You go there, if the money is available, you get it. When it's the shut off, that's it, you throw away the card. However, for the medical record, you can virtually clone the person into you. And people know exactly how to network that and find out not only physical appearances, because there's biometrics in those medical charts, also genetics, and everything else that concerns you. Plus, for example, God forbid you need to go to a hospital and you have a spouse, significant others, or other persons next of kin that actually will take you to the hospital. Not only they will have your information, but they will also gather the information of the possible other person who may be responsible or help you be responsible for that bill. They have that information as well. So they will have not only the physical, but also the biometrics, your health, where you live, where you came from, your financial. Basically, they can clone a person in no time. And we'll see some of the consequences that may occur by just that. Once again, seeing this evolution and going out as a wildfire, especially those breaches. The government, again, in his wisdom said, well, in 2003, not only we will make sure that your data is kept private and protected, but also we will enforce it. So in 2013 especially, they've been actually the Attorney General of each state was given the authority not only to prosecute whoever was being caught to steal, voluntary or involuntary, this data chart and use it inappropriately, but also using the OIG, the Office of the Inspector General, to investigate. At this point, it's not like before. You didn't comply with HIPAA, you're going to have maybe a fine, maybe a reprimand, or maybe you withheld the credentials that you have for the hospital. Now also there is also a criminal prosecution that will go at the federal level. And here's a little diagram that I brought down from the Department of Justice, how this works. It's very simplistic. Anyone in this room or out there can make a complaint. For example, you're in the waiting room, you're waiting for your next dental appointment, and you see that there is a board with all the information of all the patients there. And I'm paraphrasing something that actually happened during one of my clients' visits. And the person reported to the Department of Health. The Department of Health triggered the OIG, and the people came to the office and said, what's going on? They started doing some audits. Not only did they do the audits in the HIPAA violation or not, but also in their IT security, to see exactly what were the policy and procedures in place, physical, technical, and otherwise that needs to be put in place to control the privacy. And if there is nothing to go by, or if it was just a simple mistake, then they just said, okay, let's remediate this, either modify the policy and procedures, or just make sure that somebody closes that door, for example, and that's it. However, if it's intentional, and actually there is a reason that may be criminal, the Department of Justice can be involved, then the FBI shows up. And that people really don't like to see the FBI come in their, little mom and pop facilities. And it happens also in larger institutions, as we will see shortly. To do so, what basis does the government or the Department of Health use? We need to have some guidance. What are the standards? How can we prosecute something if we don't know exactly what they are breaking for regulation-wise? The HRS or the HIPAA security rules also said that their main goal is to make sure that the personal information is protected. To do so, they go by the NIST, or the National Institute of Standards and Technology. And if you go to that link that I sent you, actually it tells you in details all the different, like 5 or 6 domains that we'll see after this, which is this. This is one of the tools actually that I downloaded for free that you can find on the HSS. It's one of many tools available for IT security surveyors. During this, as you can see on top, there is about 809 or 806 questions total. Each domain is a standard, and then all the other questions can be considered as the substandards. And they go through, and it's very tedious. It takes hours, sometimes it takes days, just to go through every single one of those different domains. Because as you can see, it touches the administrative, the physical, and other control measures that needs to be taken in consideration. I can talk to anyone or any of my clients, especially the CEOs of those companies, about this rule and regulation, what need to be done and not to be done. The only thing they will hear after 5 minutes I'm talking is womp, 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 and they will not pay attention. However, that's when I give their attention. Right here, this is just a guidelines. And actually, it's been modified since from 2009. Actually, the minimum penalties, and those are actually financial penalties, and they can go also to prison, to the responsible. And usually the CEO or the CFO of the company will be responsible and help to pay this to maximum penalties. And it goes down from the top there where it's unintentional and all the way down to criminal actions. And once again, this is very, very basics. But for example, for the top one, it's a $50,000 per violation. Do you see the 6 domains that I showed you in the previous read there? So each domains and each sub-questions depends on what's the severity of the level of non-compliance is. It will go up to $50,000 and a maximum annual of $1.5 million per standards that was violated. One of the physicians that I was sitting in court with, and I was just one of the witnesses, and he said, "Oh, I'm covered by my liability insurance." And that's where the judge really lost his cool altogether, because not only he went to the full extent, but for each standards that was violated. And the practice went bankrupt. They closed shop altogether. Because basically he said, "I'm covered." Like we talked to earlier, whoever was here to listen to the previous one, or a couple of lectures ago, even if you're trying to divert the risk, the responsibility is still to the person who owns the data, and also who's responsible for the safety and protection of those charts. So make a quick calculation, and then we'll show you some cases and add it up. If you go to the hhs.gov, actually they will show you the daily Hall of Shame, all what's happening, and you can read in details. Actually, it's very good for someone who's actually, like in my situation, doing some surveys and audits for healthcare systems. You can see exactly step by step what went on and what actually they went through in their physical and also technical parameters to come to that particular judgment. And here are the top healthcare breaches of 2014, which we heard a couple of times. Touchstone, medical imaging. 307,000 patients were affected because apparently some of those charts were seldomly used. They were just kind of people that came once in a while just for a regular checkup. But in August 2012, they figured out that all those charts were actually open to the internet. Anyone could actually go there without password or any restriction and visit those charts. No business associates were involved. CHS, which is right here in our neighborhood, it's in Naples, Florida. 4.5 million patients were affected. That's because just some Chinese hackers, they just went into the network and just wanted to prove with very sophisticated technology how to hack and actually publish all those patient charts. They are still investigating this situation from the federal government. When you multiply each chart times $240 per chart, that may cost in legal fees, lawsuits, and remediations, so on and so forth, they may face up to $1 billion in fine and costs altogether. They have a very healthy technology insurance that they have. But if they don't have the appropriate policy and procedures and so on and so forth, they will not be covered. And hence they will have to face, as a matter of fact, there are already some rumors out there that they're trying to shop to find another corporation that buys them out and try to forget the name altogether. In the meantime, they still will have to be liable somehow for some of that particular. 4.5 million patients were compromised. This one here, 2 million patients were affected by the Texas Health and Human Services. They had a contract dispute with Xerox that was taking care of some of their, they had a contract with them. And apparently during the separation of this business associations, 2 million patients were affected because they said, that's not my responsibility to protect those charts. The hospital said, oh no, that was your back and forth. In the meantime, those 2 million patients charts were actually right there for the public to grab. And once again, third party contracts is very important to go through all the different analysis and what needs to be done. Same thing here, County of Los Angeles Public Health, 342,000 patients were affected. Same thing, just somebody stole the desktop. Just at the lab, and they just stolen from the offices. One thing that needs to be very taken in consideration, especially if we take care of PII and PHIs, is the main reasons that the most damage is identity theft. As I said earlier, people can actually clone somebody else's by just the data available in those charts. Insurance fraud, that can pertain to be somebody else's. Since they have all the information now, everything is done electronically, they can put in there and use somebody else's benefits for their own. Dangerous hoaxes. One of my employees, as a matter of fact, got a victim. I knew because she was working in the office with me that particular week. Somebody called, said, I need so-and-so information because she needs a emergency surgery and she's in England. If there's any way, can you give me the rest of the information so we can proceed with the surgery? I said, well, I'm not sure because the person is right here sitting by me at the office. Somebody got a hold of her chart somehow. So firsthand, we actually did experience that. Stolen prescriptions. Once again, all prescriptions are also electronics now. If somebody hacked into ARP and they know exactly, sometimes those prescriptions in the less sophisticated ones, they are just PDF format. They just discover, they decrypt that particular document, and they go to the pharmacy with a script that's totally perfectly legal, and they take it. And then, of course, tampering with medical records, which is the worst. As a clinician, imagine, let's see that you are at the hospital and somebody hacked into your information, and just because they are malicious, they compromise the records. They don't say, for example, that you have diabetes or you have a severe aortic stenosis and so on and so forth. And suddenly they proceed with the health care that you're supposed to receive, but yet they have compromised information. Which brings also those other security considerations. The hackers attack, it's not if, they will happen. And it does happen on a daily basis. Number two, the insiders. Once again, the most error and the most damage done to patient health care, it's from the insiders themselves. Sometimes just because they are too busy. Laptops left unencrypted and unattended. Or computers that they don't have timeouts and they are on and people can just go out there. I don't have a picture right here, but I found some laptops with USB ports or even printers that they are networked, and they were just out there just collecting all the data. And of course, for all of us that actually been through these trainings probably years ago or recently, once again, let's go back to the fundamentals. Trying to maintain the triads, the integrity of the information that we have and the data that we have. The availability. Is it going to be available when we need it and when it's necessary? And then also the confidentiality. Do we have all the systems and security controls appropriate to maintain all that information confidential? And of course here we go slightly in details about the technical safeguards. Access, authentications, audits, encryption, BYOD. Again, we mentioned that multiple times. How many times I've seen physicians and they walk around and say, oh, let me show you my kid's bar mitzvah or whatever. And they have all that information, they have the camera on, and they don't even realize that they are, by just mismanipulating their system, they're actually taking pictures of patients, even if it's without information. Picture of patients, sensitive information on the screen with the x-rays or lab results and so on and so forth. People just like to do selfies. How many times we saw people doing selfies? I said, oh, that's innocent. They're just taking selfies with mom. But next door, they have actually a mini chart with all the information and the medications level and so on and so forth. And then they post it with a geolocator on Facebook, and everybody knows that Aunt so-and-so is at the hospital at that particular room and so on and so forth. So, and there is always somebody out there lurking around and just creeping around. Physical safeguard controls. Also, facility access. I will show you a couple of pictures that I took from some of my colleagues and some from my own investigation. That it's mind-boggling how people can go. Also, workstation, we mentioned that before, and security. And then administrative. How many times we go to places, we do surveys. They said, we have policy and procedures. I said, right here. And then I look at the policy and procedures, I said, but the logo doesn't even match what you have up front. I said, did you just change the logo? So, oh no, that was the previous owner. Okay. Does that then make you suddenly owner of this policy and procedure? I don't know. We bought the building. So, well, I understand that, but are they actually up to date? That actually functions the way you are supposed to do, and based on your new company philosophy and all that. Policy and procedures that contradicts one another. And that if they go to court, it doesn't hold. They lose right there and there, regardless what systems they have available. Awareness and educations. How many times people take for granted that, oh, that person is just a janitor, we don't need to let them know. They won't understand anyway. There is always a way to inform every single part of the spectrum of our employees how important it is to be part of the security of our PHI and security overall of the facility. And then legal and risk management. Legal and risk management also needs to be in sync with the rest of the company. Sometimes, once again, attorneys especially, sometimes like a formerly known IT where they hide somewhere in the hallway and nobody sees where they are. And you're trying to find out even who's the legal advisor. You don't even know who they are. They probably even walk through your department ever. And they need to be also brought back to daily operations. Once again, we are never too small to be secure. 65% of small firms makes the backbones of the industry of the United States now. And more than 50% of that, it's healthcare industry. We don't realize that, especially here in Florida. We have more clinics and even private clinics that you can ever imagine. Same in Arizona, same in California. And it's a high concentration of business. And people say, oh, they're just small. They just have a couple of docs and just a few thousand patients. But yet, it can add up to a big mass if you don't pay attention to our responsibility as IT security people. Needs to react with our clients, our colleagues out there. Let's start a few Hall of Shame that I took. The first picture, the first two pictures right there are from a hospital in England that I've been involved with. The first picture right there is actually almost like a perfect. It was a concerned employee said that electrician has been in that ceiling for about a week. I don't even know exactly what they do, but they are there day in and day out. So he finally took a picture, and the guy said, "As an electrician, what do you want me to do about it?" Adjacent to that tile, a couple of tiles down, there is this wall right there. And that was a room that was revamped as the server room. They still had the temporary door, as you can see. They put actually a better door after that. But those were all cables that were coming from their server rooms and going to the different departments of the hospital. The guy was actually out there and tapping into their lines. When they finally authorized, and at that time was Scotland Yard, actually they went in there and he left all his equipment right there, downloaded thousands of informations and so on and so forth, banking information also, all right there. And nobody paid attention. Said, well, this little guy who said, I don't know, I've been seeing that for a week. What is he doing? How about this one here? I love it. See the little balloon right there in front of the camera. And the guy said, oh, maybe it was accidental. That was a docking area of the hospital. They were in and out, and they were transferring some charts. Nothing was really found if it was stolen or not, but look at this, though. Nobody did anything for a week. The balloon was right there with a string. And of course, with the wind, it's not always in front of the camera, but right there is a hint. Plus a bright yellow balloon, really. How about the other one there? I interviewed the electrician and said, what gave you the hint that something was wrong? Well, the blueprints that I had to bring to put the camera right here. I said, but the screen was in front of it. I said, well, I don't know. So perhaps you should have, contacted the supervisor and said, is actually the right spot where I need to put this? Or the right direction? It was like that for a week and a half before anyone actually reacted to it. How about this one here? On the left side, I took that picture. It was a old server room. It was just for email server, nothing major. However, the keys in the door was ajar for an hour and a half. Nobody ever claimed the door. Finally, I removed the keys and took it to the security department. I said, those keys were at that door for an hour and a half, and nobody even, I stood there. Nobody took them. On the other side was a hospital here in Florida. Wonderful keypad. It's one of the labs at the hospital. In the little white tag, it says laboratory, blah, blah, blah. In very little on the little tag, actually there is the combination code to open a keypad. And people say, well, we forget. We have all those codes. I said, I understand, but really? Right there, right next to it? Why don't you just leave it open? And right here, that's one of my favorite. A plastic surgeon surgery center. That's actually the fence around the backup generator. Sometimes we think about all the high techs that we need to pay attention to, and we forget about the physical part of it. Look at that one. They just put a cable tie. Well, I guess they have a huge padlock, though. It makes it very mean, though. Here we go. Which brings, as we mentioned multiple times in this conference, it needs to start from the top. Sometimes on top, the CEOs, the CFOs, and all that don't see it. They see numbers. They see that they need to be, financial savvy. However, if they don't know, we need to make sure that the CEOs needs to know about what's going on and do presentations like that on a regular basis. And not so much about the quantum cryptology that they will look at us like, what in the world are you talking about? Let's talk about real word that we use on an everyday manner and find out things like that. Also, access our risk. We need to assess our risk on a continuous basis. Monitor the threats. What are the threats? I mean, as we said, many people say, oh, I have the logs, but do we actually examine those logs? What do they tell us? If we don't know, let's bring somebody in actually who can analyze that in the appropriate way. Report any attacks, even if you think that it's not, especially when it's HIPAA violations or any other, for example, trade secrets being stolen or possibly being stolen. Let's report that. Implement cybersecurity plan. What do we have in place? Especially here in Florida, we have hurricane plans, we have fire plans, we have mandatory, security stuff, but do we have anything like that actually for our cybersecurity in place, where people actually know what needs to be done in some circumstances? Protect your customers. Customers are ourselves too, as employee. We are part of the customers. And then we need to also train our employees in the appropriate manner. And as you can see, this assessment, response, and monitoring, it's ongoing. And I do thank you. Any questions? Yes, sir.
I find that we're it's just different worlds. So if there's a security conference at A for here, right? And then I go out on how in Stanford, I'm listening to some MedX conference, new ways of doing things, the whole system is growing. And the federation, the movement, the analytics of data, the number of clinicians that are coming up, and the number of patients that want to, they're more interested in, hey, I really don't care about the privacy because that's not a choice. This system does not support that. And so talk about all the problems, but I'm getting the comment, how do we start talking about solutions for adopting all the dynamic ways of doing things?
This would be because of the presentation altogether. Totally agree with you. To present what's happening to us in real life. I'm one of the instructors also in the access curriculum. And actually, we're developing new curriculums, first for the BSides.
I read through the book.
And we actually attended 3 lectures going back to manufacturing system development. And we have a new way of social systems. Now, the people that get involved in that hospital security, they actually will go through that. Not only they are implementing new techniques, not so much if it's when you make it, how ready we are, but also they implement that in the general orientation when you are hired at any level, IT or non-IT, to make them aware of it. Because once again, people don't understand what we have presented. They don't pay attention to it. They're more around it. Obviously, for many years, this format has been like stealth. Many people have don't understand that. And that's why we are trying to promote a new philosophy where everybody needs to be aware of what's going on. Not only yet, but what's going to happen and what needs to be done on the day. Yes.
Isn't the reality that the cost of protecting your patients, protecting your business, protecting your practice, protecting your healthcare industry is higher than the cost of not protecting it today?
Well, it is true. For example, if you have a $100 problem, you're not going to invest $1,000 to fix it, right? So then you have to leverage the risk. That's part of the risk management.
What do you see as the changing factors in the cost of making this happen? Because I think everybody here will agree, and I certainly agree, that is a problem in the healthcare industry. The healthcare industry is far behind. Other industries are addressing this. Anthem, I think, was a little bing wake-up call for some people, but still, nonetheless, the cost, when you look at the analysis and how much do I spend to protect myself, is not worth it today.
Well, what's the cost of the patient life if they are killed due to medical activity?
Well, I hate to say it, but how much is applying to the medical practice for that? And if it isn't, I mean, that's just a fact. You want to talk morals and ethics, that's a different conversation. We're talking dollars and cents, and that's on the world lines, at least in this country for healthcare right now. I don't mean to argue that anyway, but this is a long-standing problem that concerns me, and I would love to promote more security awareness, and I do promote security awareness every day in my job in healthcare. But the problem that I face is, well, you know, we've got 100 problems and we've got $10, you know, and we want to save all the puppies, we really do. Why? And so is it government regulation?
Government regulation, once again, if you start implementing some then people will agree with that. Because creative finance is there in the economy. Multiple times I've worked many years in engineering to a lot of environment in hospitals. And there was quite a lot of money. And then a year and a half later, you started doing involved on the facility, which is fine. However, if that happens, then you will have to readjust where you're going to have to make your impact. It's an evolutionary. Unfortunately, sometimes you don't have alternative issues around however, once again, it's going to be on at the end of if you talk about politics and fairness, we're at the end of the person. We continue to make that something that will probably alleviate also tax, or if you invest so much, then you can have some tax incentives, especially for not-for-profit hospitals. Private hospitals, believe me, as long as I've been in this industry in many areas, the funds are there. But, for example, quick anecdote, this position was the comment that I wanted to make. This is the thing that will save lives in the next 10 years. About 2 months ago, I went back there, just to time, the hospital there, and they were so people have to sort of understand how to prioritize and handle expense in a way that you see that once again, if the CFO and the CEO is not a variable, then This is for many years, it's not really important. We're really important. It's very easy to talk to the physicians was on with the XCP as something to go on. However, if they are aware of this and they inform us of the physician on this, maybe that these whole patients will be compromised and perhaps, being quiet and being in a situation where they will have to go shop or merge with somebody else. The whole goal of the organization was very anxious in the way that the role probably with the book. We never want to have a perfect security have physical, technical, whatever you want to call it. So we're going to be submissive. However, it's a new generation. We're going to new items. The banks did that 20 years ago.
Banks still, no matter the hundreds of millions they spent, this is why I don't believe my data are stolen, right? Because the banks have spent this point, this is just a question, the banks have spent way more than any healthcare organization we've ever had to spend, and they've still lost basically all of the
It wasn't that long ago that people were still using cash and checks. Now it's almost possible. Because I see my doctors, they don't have cash, they all always use their iPhone or iPad, so on and so forth. So they will use different methods of payment. Granted, the back end or seems like there's you try to go on the iPad or something like that, those kind of call towards perfect call to it's going to be the rates that it's going to take. However, everything is so virtual. And like the bank did 20 years ago, and I know this still happening, still a victim.
How do I convince doctors, small practice,
Yes.
because that's my world, sorry,
Absolutely.
that this is important and they need to carve out a budget for this?
Once again, it has to be clear to reality important. We don't have to. This is actually happening here. I had one physician, plastic surgeon, fantastic, once again, he was not really referred, and he was complaining that he couldn't afford because he had so many agitated. Some of the stations were still like, how could you even type software? And
Cancer running on wheels.
correct. And he was comparing something that like such and such, and he got exposure. I said, not to fit into your own pocket. It's not like this. You want to do all that. I'm sure that once you're aware today, you said you can actually outfit, you do software that actually will impact and with a return. You see that you're providing food, also streamline your charting and billing and so on and so forth. You won't go buy a new watch. You always work. But once again,
They're saying EHR, oh my God, we need to use, oh my God, IC10, please, we could stop. HIPAA, 5010, we just finished that. What is next? Cybersecurity, really, in healthcare? And we're going, yeah, really, in healthcare. And this is a risk, this is a problem. And they're going, okay, well, how much is this one going to cost me a little more? Because my plate's full.
and what the is that if I had insurance, you got the alcohol. Anyone, if you look at insurance, they're going to run whatever policy you want. If you pay them, they won't. However, that's what it's right. They won't pay because agent policy procedures do not match the it's actually useless. And the court law is rules. However, once again, if there's law enforcement, which never happened before, and it happens, stuff that we did not do the law enforcement. For the people who are like training. And for the law enforcement, it will come back.
I need to feed them consumable lights that they can understand, that help them prepare, because I believe that there are going to be regulations that enforce these things at some point, and the more prepared they are when that happens, and even if they're prepared way before that happens, it's got marketing and promotion value in their community, these sorts of things. So I'm trying to get my head around that in such a way that I can communicate it very well to them, so that they do the things they need to do.
When I'm in the country, people, you know, I would say people have to think about that. What I do, I have also the admin version of this service. Very basic for the smaller size. And that's the way I do it. The service is so through that, we probably set up that. And then we see all the red lines, all the green lines. We see how much spending. And then based on the approximately the government is giving us, show, it's going to cost you about this for that. And then let's put together a simple plan, just like a spreadsheet. Okay. You buy the insurance, you can call it off that. You're going to call it only a cost based on violations or possible violations that you have to consider. Right there, we will see exactly what.
So you have this survey, you can help me find this survey?
Here.
No, I think that, small practice for 7 years. The doctors that I worked for, they didn't touch the computer. They didn't know how to update this information. They had nothing to do with the system. We updated our system, but we only did because it was us completely, hey, this is going slow, since the 1980s. We need to get with it, okay? And that was only after years of begging. And doctors don't care about this stuff. They go to school to be trained to do what they do. They don't do computers, they don't do this. And what I'm seeing in all this world, I think would be if there's some type of repercussion from the government that where they're forced to do this stuff. You're not going to get to do it because they would be using their about the patient from the medical aspect and not the technology aspect. Those are practically blind to that. Which is why they don't, it seems like they don't care.
My daughter is on college at it's very progressive school. And the new generation of physicians coming out, they are more aware of it than anybody else. Not only with that customer service and bedside manner, but also this because it is part of some of the newer programs. Actually love it like that. Because what you have, I experienced that once many years ago when I was working from home yet, when I said the FBI only hallway, and it only just stayed right there on the move. And they came out,
subspecialty physicians in clinical informatics from the MIA starting this year.
Sure.
So you can specialize in
Once again, it's changing culture. It's a lot of changes. The new generation is looking more aware of it. And it's not going to be who knows that. It's going to be this is brand new.
My doctor is very old school. I worked for a pediatric dentist, and he put my dentist when I was over. So just to put things in perspective, and his too. And a lot of people are still in there, I get that. From our perspective, what we're trying to educate the mom and pop practices on is to have a practice administrator, a practice manager that understands all these things. But it's still coming out of their pocket, it's still coming out of their budget. So the practice manager is asking for money for the EHR, for the PM, for all these other things. And how do we get them to include this is a big challenge I'm having from why I'm here. But the physicians themselves, from just the practice manager, I totally get that. And I get that the younger physicians are really into the technology and they dig in and they're able to do that. But mom and pop practices back years and years ago could be the doctors doing everything. You know, they see the patients, they do some paperwork, they do some filing, they do all that. They have some cute chick that answers the phone and makes great coffee. But well, it is a lot of them. That you're talking about probably have that when they open the doors, you know. But today, it's a small business. And when you're running a small business in a highly regulated industry, you need a professional manager that's paying attention to the business aspects of that organization.
Well, in healthcare, especially in the Southeast United States, especially the education, for many years, not all of us, for many years, charts in the past, this far, weeks. And you know exactly where they were at, because you had fantastic memory. Now we need 3 months. So,
you have the laptop unencrypted.
and it has its more conservative.
I mean, I see that with this.
Correct. You can have even the roles. I mean, everybody has a principle document. How many positions are out there that use dropouts? A lot. Okay, so it's very quickly about that. For 3 days, it was completely open for 6 hours. 6 hours were open by the they had inflation, and that's because of the
Really?
Yeah. So it does happen. So if you say, oh, I'm just on top. Sorry, no, it's
Sure.
I mean, we can talk for days. I mean,
I thought you covered it well.
what I did is, I had a couple of guys, I normally work for the city services in Los Angeles, and they were like, we are fully blown up because there's more and more problems, because not only they still their information, but also financially. So the city services involved, they got on the staff. As a matter of fact, if you read in some, especially the fishing the online magazine, actually they try to look for the names. They put them about and what they actually try to find the way to promote. I'm just using the idea of actually a sound of agency. That is what teachers, staff, and specialists do for that. Because it's totally out of control. They can just every single second. Thank you so much, everyone.